Spontaneous speaking video 60. What's up, everyone? I'm here with Jeremiah. This is actually my roommate, and fun fact, ENFJ, so you already know what type of video this is going to be. And we've had several great discussions so far since rooming together and everything, and I've been wanting to get him on my channel, but nothing by force. And one of the conversations that we had recently, the one following the one about aliens, if they exist, and then how that led into like salvation being in different multiverses and all of that. This is the type of stuff to me to talk about. Was a more grounded one, which is masculinity. And especially us both being not only feelers, but feeler dominants, ENFJs. On top of that, I thought that it would be very interesting to, get Jeremiah's take on it, especially since Jeremiah, he's not all that well versed in MBTI, but he was also the one who brought it up himself. And I want to feature people on my channel who already know enough about it and everything, and are already passionate about whatever they want to speak on. So out of the several different topics that we had in mind, this is probably the first. Jeremiah's probably going to be, especially as my roommate, you're most likely going to be featuring in more videos. But this was the topic that we decided to stick with for this video today, which happens to be masculinity. And just a quick side note, I guess, I mentioned how me and David also made a video on being an NFJ male. So I think there's going to be a lot of overlap with that. If you guys haven't seen that one, you should definitely go check it out. But I would really love to hear Jeremiah's take on it, and I think that he has a lot of good nuggets to share with you guys and everything. So yeah, without further ado, do you have anything to say?
Just getting right into it. I definitely love this topic. When I was a kid, my mom taught me and my brothers. She taught us about as much as she knew about being a man, and even though my dad wasn't super involved, she still knew the importance of us being men ourselves, and what that was going to look like in the future, and what does it mean to be a man, because of course it's different now than it would have been a long time ago. And so especially with things that we know, things like personality types and things like that, we know that there's not just one cookie cutter idea of a man. So definitely.
Yeah, I agree with that. Usually, I guess we could start off with my idea of masculinity back in the day, and even and it's not as much now, thankfully, but my idea of masculinity back in the day was you have to be very muscular, you have to have a beard, and you pretty much you have to be insensitive and detached to an extent. So for those of you who know about MBTI, most thinkers would be seen as masculine because they're naturally more detached. They're not as emotionally invested, well, not invested, but as emotionally intelligent, or even aware, because they're much more logical, much more into metrics and things that are more objective and not really subjective in manner. And that even back in high school, a lot of the girls, that's the type of guys they wanted the guys who would forget that they even had a girlfriend or something like that. And now looking at even with David Data's new not new book, but with David Data's book, The Way of a Superior Man, for those of you who haven't heard of it, you should go check that out. I actually believe that he might be an ENFJ, whatever, so that's even better. And then you look at I forgot his name at the moment, David Goleman, I believe, or Daniel Goleman, I believe, who he talks about how emotional intelligence is actually the key to success in a way, and it's actually the best type of intelligence over anything else, and he's in the ENFJ. So this isn't just for NFJs, but I just think that since we're both NFJs and feeler dominants, then of all types, it's best for us to speak about how that looks like, especially as an FE dominant. So we naturally look at what society expects from us. What does society see as a man? What does society see as this? What does society see as masculine, whatever? and then we kind of adopt those values for ourselves as FE users. And so I also think of Tupac, who's also ENFJ. And when you look at an interview, like you guys can search it, I'll actually probably like put the link in the video that pop up like right about now, where you see him when he was 17 years old, and he was literally speaking like, oh, you know what, I have no patience for he pretty much was very, very what's the word? I don't want to say, like, he was just very respectful. He had lots of good manners. And he said that, like, you know, like, he said, even one of his comments, he was like, you know, I see guys and they call girls the B word, you know, and it's like, whoa. But then he said that a girl specifically told him that she can't be with him because he's too nice. And it's like, what? And then there's actually a video on YouTube where it's like Tupac before and after. And now, like, it goes from Tupac when he was 17 saying, like, she said I was too nice. And so, you know what? I said, you know what? If I'm too nice, then, and you want the guys like that, then that's how I'm going to be. And he changed his lifestyle. Now you see how he, like, you know, like, you have videos of him going, like, F these, you know, stuff like that and all of that. And it's just like, wow. So this type of mindset, all in all, what I'm saying is that it's really heavy on us as guys, especially feeler guys, FE doms and everything, or FE users in general. And I think that it would be very important to, like, have a way of defining our own masculinity, and even looking at, like, other people who were similar to us, thought similarly that we did, who were also emotionally intelligent and aware of their emotions, or, like, sensitive towards others, but then still were seen as masculine. And that's kind of like my take on it. But what was your original view of masculinity?
Well, I definitely thought that there's definitely a lot of misconceptions that I think I believed. There's even some things, you could even look it up online. It's called, I think it's called toxic masculinity. And it's kind of a crazy, off-the-wall idea that masculinity itself is actually bad. And it kind of takes the stereotypes like Denzel was talking about, where the guy's just completely detached and he doesn't even care, and, like, he's just like a jerk, and, like, it just takes that stereotype, all these stereotypes, and piles it up and kind of, like, makes it appear that masculinity itself is, like, wrong, which I think is definitely not the case. And I think there's a little bit more freedom with that because we have different personality types. There's freedom with what masculinity is, but I definitely wouldn't say it's a wrong thing because it's something that we're built with. It's something that's built into our DNA and who we are, our identity. So it's definitely not something that's it's not something that's wrong, because it's natural. It's definitely natural, and it looks different. It looks different for different people. So.
Okay, so you would agree that masculinity is not something that can be defined, like, because I guess, like, because I've heard something similar from a guy named Elliot Hulse on YouTube. He has a video where he was actually answering the question about masculinity and everything, and he said that masculinity is essentially as individual as our fingerprints, and you have to tap into it in different ways. And then he said that he specifically, or him, like, personally, he taps into his masculinity, or he embraces his masculinity in the same way that, you know, like, Native Americans used to, which was, like, in dance and in song. And then he goes on in the video, like, around, like, 6:45, for those of you who go to check it out, he'll kind of surprise you where he's like, you know, he's, like, really, like, yelling and all of that. And he already, like, seems crazy, ironically also ENFJ. But you look at his videos and you see the comments and everyone's like, this is so good, you know, all of that. And, like, they're saying how, like, him doing that, him not being afraid to do that, is in and of itself masculinity, because it's that confidence of, like, you can't tell him, like, he looks crazy as he's, like, doing this dance and all of that, like, yelling, whatever. But then when he was done, he was like, that's a lot of effing man right there. I have more testosterone coursing through my body than you probably ever had. And it's like, wow, you know, and that's how he embraces his masculinity. But then he said that we should find our own way. And if everyone's looking for their own way to define masculinity, then is there really even a way, like, is there, like, how do we even draw that line between masculinity and femininity?
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I think that's a hot topic. I mean, really, masculinity and femininity, or however you would say that. There's kind of a line there, and I think the line has been blurred, especially recently. But I think that masculinity can be defined, but not in the ways that we would stereotype or that we would think. It doesn't have to do with how much facial hair you can grow, right, or how big you are. You know what I mean? Those are things that we kind of have in our mind as like, oh, that's like a manly man. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
But I think it's a lot of things, and I think that it doesn't matter if you're. I mean, you can be skinny. You can have a higher register voice or something like that, and like. And still be manly. Like, just because those like stereotypes are there that's not manly, I think there is a set form of manliness, but I think it is shown in different ways. Okay. Like you said, like it's kind of manifested in a different way. I think that there's some underlying manliness that there's some kind of form of manliness, and it manifests differently in different people, like you were saying. But I think that there's something and I don't think that it's really possible to strictly define that, just because it is very unique to people. Right. But I do think there's that underlying manliness. But yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes sense. So then, personally speaking, how would you say that you embrace your masculinity?
Well, again, it has a lot to do with my personality type. For me, I guess the way I was taught and the way that I understood it and the way that I manifested that was kind of like, I always wanted to learn like the traditional like lost arts of manliness, like things like archery, and like a man who could do multiple things, really a jack of all trades kind of, maybe not necessarily just kind of like a one trick pony or whatever, so I guess like things like jiu-jitsu, archery,
which you pretty much mastered those
oh
two. He's gonna be humble, but he's great at jiu-jitsu, great at archery. I'll say it for you. It's okay.
Thanks,
so there's that.
Yeah, just things like that. Even like I don't know how to hunt, but that'd be something cool to learn too. I just learning those ancient arts, that's always fascinated me. That's kind of how I guess manifest that. Another thing is just I think character is huge. I honestly think that that's a bigger part of whatever that underlying form is. I think character is much bigger than the physical.
Yeah.
And it's like things like honor and integrity and things like that. Honesty. These things are like these things. Even if a man doesn't look manly, he if he has these things, he's a real man. I did kind of like my own mini survey one time, because I've been thinking about this stuff for a long time, and we've been talking about it, and I was at my work or something, and I was like asking people, what makes a man a man, and some people said integrity. That was just like I said, they said integrity. Some person said a man who can take care of himself and his family. I'm like okay, and then some person said like a man is like someone who will take responsibility for their actions. And I was like, okay. I mean, and I think all these things contribute, and character, I think, is a huge part of it.
Yeah, I agree with you. Even like going off of what you said, like referencing to the Bible, one thing that I thought was like very emasculating, actually, in my personal opinion, was Adam. Mm-hmm. Like that mistake where, Eve ate from the fruit. And it says in the Bible that Adam was pretty much right there with her. So it's like, okay, you already failed as a man right there, because God specifically told you directly that we shouldn't eat from the fruit. He didn't tell Eve directly, but you passed on that message. But that means that you're responsible for her, and you allowed that to happen. So that was emasculating. And then on top of that, he when God came and asked him, and God already knows everything, but God gives us chances to explain ourselves, and God and he was pretty much, for those of you who may not know the story, then Adam and Eve were hiding, because as soon as they ate from the fruit, then they were they realized that they were both naked, and so they tried to hide and everything, and then God comes walking through the garden, spiritually of course, and he finds them, well, they finally come out after he calls out for them, and then he's like, how did you, like, Adam and Eve, they're like, oh, we were hiding because, you know, we were naked and everything. And then God's like, I don't know how long Adam and Eve had been living at that time. The Bible wasn't specific to my knowledge about that. But God's like, how did you know that you were naked? Because they've been naked since the day they were made. So how all of a sudden you guys nervous about being naked in front of me? Then he's like, have you guys eaten from the tree that I told you not to eat from? And then Adam's like, well, the girl that you put over here, she's the one who gave me the fruit and I ate it. And it's like, as soon as, every time I hear about that part, every time I read that part, I'm just like, dude, really? Because I really do think that, like, a masculine, like, manly trait is character and being able to protect, you know, like, taking up ownership and responsibility for what you do wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes even for the things that you don't do wrong, like, but maybe other people have done wrong. Like, if you have a daughter or a son or a girlfriend, whatever, you take responsibility for what they may have done. A younger sibling, you know, like, you own up to that, like, on their behalf in a way. And I look back at Ephesians 5, where I think that they do a really good job on talking about how a man is supposed to be, you know, a Christian man at least. And one of the biggest things they always say, like, everyone always talks about how, like, the woman should, like, the wife should submit to her husband, which, by the way, does not mean that, you know, you sit back and you tell your wife, hey, go make me a sandwich, or, you know, come rub my feet, or, like, she has to be, like, worshiping you and she has no say. That's not what it means. And we'll go deeper into what that actually means in another video, but that's not what it means. If anything, it means, like, well, yeah, like I said, we'll go deeper into that in another video. But everyone always talks about the submission of the woman, but nobody really talks about, like, what exactly is expected from the man. God said that the man, the husband, should love his wife in the way that Jesus loves the church. And Jesus loved the church so much that he left heaven, perfect home in heaven, to come die for us. And that's pretty much where God wants us to be with our wives. Like, he wants us to be so, you know, invested, so in love with the person that we choose to marry, that we are protecting our family in that fashion. We love her so much, we love our family so much that we are willing to take a bullet for them. And if we are willing to put our lives on the risk for that, then why wouldn't a woman want to, you know, like, respect us and, you know, like, reverence us? Because that means, like, it's a if anything, like, it's an equal sacrifice, if at that, you know, like, I'm serving you, and we lead by servanthood. I think that a real man, like, masculinity is servanthood. Like, Jesus, I feel like Jesus was masculine, and he washed his disciples' feet. You know, he left heaven to come and die for us. Jesus, he was masculine in my opinion, and I think that pretty much all of this is just go off what you said about how it really does reflect in our character, like, your ability to take responsibility, your ability to own up to, like, you know, the things that you've done, being honest with yourself and with other people, being authentic to who you are, a mindset on, like, growing and maturity. Bible also says, like, you know, Paul said that when I was a child, I did his childish things, but then when I grew up, then I put those childish things away. And so that's kind of like how I see it, like, when we're talking about, like, masculinity as well. Like, it definitely has, like, a lot of its own traits.
Yeah, and you know, when you're talking about that, I also think of you know, David in the Bible, and I'm going to premise this actually really quick. You know, I think of another thing about being a man is balance. You know, balance is key. It's, you know, being a king and a lover, being a you know, a warrior but a poet.
Wow.
You know, and so, like, you know, and David is a really great example of really a man, like a masculine man. You know, you see he, like, you know, you see how he's, you know, he's a poet. He writes these beautiful songs and everything, and you know, we have the lyrics of that in the Psalms. And you see that, but then you also see, when you see his life story, you see how he does things like, he wants to marry one of Saul's daughters, and Saul tells him, you have to kill 100 men. And he says, like, you have to bring back a part of them to prove that you've killed them. And he does, and he goes and kills 100 men to earn the heart of this woman.
Yeah.
His daughter, I believe her name was Michael, I believe. But anyway, she, like, that's like such a beautiful picture, because, you know, when you talk about, you know, and you mentioned that too, like earning the heart of the woman, and that's why she submits. And so it's really a beautiful picture, because women, you know, women are created to be so beautiful. They're created to be the epitome of beauty in creation. And so it calls out the man in us.
Yeah,
that's why.
Yeah,
you know,
wow, that's a really good way.
Yeah,
I like that.
Thank you. Yeah, and I heard one guy say that, you know, that's why you see, you know, when a pretty girl walks in the room, that's why little boys start doing like cartwheels and backflips and things. And so
I was one of those little boys.
Yeah. And so it's just seeing the beauty of a woman. It calls the man out of us.
Wow.
And because we see that beauty, and like it's like, I want to fight for her. I want to fight for her, and that's when the manliness rises up. I'm getting chills just saying. Like the manliness rises up, and you're like, I want to fight for her.
Yeah.
And you know, you get the image in your mind, like, you know, the two knights jousting for the princess and stuff. So
I'm even thinking of like Mulan, like
yes,
we're fighting for.
yeah, right. So absolutely, and so I just think of that, and like that balance is there. You see the poet. And so, and that gentleness, you still see that gentleness. And David himself, you can see, he loved his wife, you know, and so you see that gentleness and that love and that sensitivity, but at the same time, he had that fire inside of him. Mm-hmm. It was like a spark that could blow up.
Wow.
And when he needed it, when he needed to be, you know, when he needed that, it was there.
Yeah.
That, like, the beast inside. And,
wow.
like, it's good.
Yeah.
If it's, and you keep it on a leash, but you need to know how to unleash it.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That's good.
Thanks.
That's good. No, I really, really like that. That's also true, especially, like, how a woman, the beauty of a woman brings out the man in us. Absolutely. Which is, like, that's so profound to, like, just even sit down and digest, like, Proverbs 31, which a lot of like people like quote, you know, like if you look at Proverbs 31 verse 30, I believe, where it talks about like charm is deceitful, but a woman who fears the Lord is like worthy to be praised. Mm-hmm. You know, like when you look at that chapter, it exemplifies like a really good, the virtuous wife, like how she like, you know, serves her family and everything, but in the same sense, like the man, like why would you not want to serve a woman like that, you know? And now Drake actually just came out with his song, Nice for What? Nice for What? And the video is pretty much like giving credit to all of the women out there who are like doing like great things, like Yara Shahidi, like she's phenomenal. She's a phenomenal woman. Like, and then he just featured like so many other women in there. And then you look at like all these great women in the past, like Claire Huxtable, the woman who played her and everything, and then even like, you know, real women, like characters such not characters, but like real people such as like even like Rosa Parks, you know, looking at women like that and like admiring like their how strong like they were, it really does call out the man in you, because it takes a strong masculine man, which means a man with character, to be able to effectively treat and provide for and, you know, care for properly for a woman with character. And so I guess that kind of like goes right back into this whole masculinity thing. Like it really is a character thing at the end of the day. It's not really about like, oh, can you like tie a tie and, you know, change a tire and stuff like that. All of that is good to be able to know. But at the same time, like, hey, for example, I always thought about like how it would be so nice to like, I like to cook. And I can't wait, like, you know, like when I'm married and everything, you know, like I'm helping my wife, you know, like with washing dishes or like with cooking, like if I come home from work and everything, and I don't mind if she's, you know, she's making more money than me or anything, you know, but I just come home like, you know, like, hey, so how was your day? As I'm like helping her like wash dishes, you know, maybe like splash her a little bit, something, you know, stuff like that. I think that's beautiful. And I think that's still masculine, you know, like if I'm like, you know, like vacuuming, now I'm not gonna wear like an apron or something like you know what I mean? But like that's where I kind of like draw the line. But like at the same time, like if you do that, like I wouldn't say like, oh, you're feminine, you know, like it just goes way past that. It goes way past that type of behavior. It's more of like where that behavior is like rooted. So when you look at the traditional, women are supposed to be cooking, women are supposed to be like doing this, men could do those things too, and men probably even should do those things as well. But that's not what marks you as feminine. That's not what marks you as masculine. It's about the roots. Like, what is your character?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and kind of going off, onto the feminine side of things. I think it's really cool. Just to touch on it a little bit, like, a woman is not determined just the same way, and I can't say too much because I'm not a woman, but a woman wouldn't be determined by her looks or actions, either. So, and it's just about like, what is your goal? What are your goals? What are the things that what are your desires? What are like, it's your character, and the same thing as a guy. It's like your character, it's your goals, your desires, those things, those natural things inside. You know what I mean? Like a woman who wants to be a mom, that's a natural thing, And then, of course, that's not masculine to want to be a mom, you know what I mean? That's a woman, so like, So it's those things, like, women have that too, and, I won't get into it, but, I just to kind of bounce off what you said, but.
Yeah, exactly. So that's pretty much, our riff today. Usually Jeremiah and I can go on for hours about about like anything. Maybe one day we will fill you in on the conversation that we had about aliens and multiverse and salvation possibility on different planets and stuff like that. That went on for like 2 hours.
That was a good one, yeah.
Yeah, that was. It was late at night too. So it all started with the question that another ENFJ friend, Cameron, asked. Do you believe in aliens? And that went to a whole different story. But we kept it short for you guys today because it's a spontaneous speaking video. And make sure to leave your thoughts on what you guys think. Let us know, like, if you have any questions. If you like anything, like Jeremiah, I live with him. So if you have any like recommendations, like videos that you'd like to see him, like his take on in the future and everything, like, we can definitely go ahead and make those. Like, it's nothing. We just got to like ask him because he has such a busy schedule. He's secretly the Green Arrow, and he comes in at night, like around like 1 a.m. like all torn up with this bow and arrow and everything. I don't know what you're doing at night. So yeah, but do you have anything lastly to say, or?
I don't think so.
All right, cool. Well, thanks you guys for tuning in, and done.